welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Season's greetings. This is Paul Sickle.
Hey, Merry Christmas, Paul.
Yes.
You can say Merry Christmas again.
Oh, yeah.
Donald Trump declared.
Merry Christmas is...
You know, all those years we couldn't say Merry Christmas, and...
Yes. Did you see that tape that was it Chris Hayes did of all the times Obama said Merry Christmas?
Yeah. I love how perception becomes reality.
Tons of times.
Yeah.
Very public events. But okay, all right.
Yeah, whatever.
On TV, you name it. Okay, so we've got a few things going on. One is
mostly national politic news, but the last time we spoke was about a week ago, and the tax bill was still under consideration by the U.S. Senate. It was actually on its way to the floor, and since that time, last Friday, it passed in the wee hours of the morning. It passed by 51-49. We unfortunately Susan Collins got some assurances, I guess, that they were going to pass the healthcare fixes, and so that was enough for her to
Collins
come around.
Caved, you said
Collins and
flaked, as we said.
Flaked. Jeff Flake, Arizona, who's retiring.
Right.
Lisa Murkowski got some Anwar stuff in there around drilling in the refuge up in Alaska, so that got her on board.
What was it that got her on board exactly? She wanted more drilling?
Well, it's the Anwar is there has not been drilling.
Right.
When Clinton was president and when Obama was president, they protected it.
I'm surprised they hadn't already freed that up.
Yeah, it didn't happen. They wanted to do it even when Bush was president, but it didn't happen.
Okay, so that's nice. So we get a little bit more.
So they want to open that
oil
door.
Development in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not going to do anything for oil prices. It's a gift to the oil companies and a gift to
Alaska. Relative.
Yeah. Well, people in Alaska get dividends.
Right.
Off of the drilling that happens there, so that's why it has such large support.
So the tax bill we thought, was going to be close. Corker was the only.
He was the only
Republican. Abstention is not the right word.
No. I mean, he voted no. So Bob Corker, Tennessee,
right,
voted no, and he's another one who's been outspoken about his opinions about Trump, and he's retiring. He's done after 2018.
And what's wrong with the tax bill in your opinion?
Bob Corker's position was that it's adding $1 trillion to the debt.
Right.
So
which I that's true.
Yeah. The myth or the belief or the faith-based economic view of the supporters of this thing is that it will pay for itself based on no analysis whatsoever.
Or any historic precedent.
No.
Which I suppose is what analysis is based on.
We all remember how,
in the 80s they blew it up when they cut the taxes. The debt blew up. And
George W. Bush's tax cuts because he had multiple in the 2000s.
And when Clinton increased taxes and even Obama increased taxes, finally the debt went down.
They balanced the budget.
The deficit, the annual deficit went down in both cases. Under Clinton, and actually the debt went down, which means they balanced.
They were starting to pay it down. Remember we were arguing about the surplus when the Bush-Gore election.
Right.
And it was this whole thing about, what are we going to do with this money? And there was the lockbox stuff with Medicare and Social Security, and then
which would have been really nice to have now. Had Al Gore had his lockbox, so we'd be in better shape today.
What it's looking like now is they're going to, if they can get this thing through the full Congress to Trump's desk, then come 2018, then the next thing can be about, we don't have the money to pay for entitlements anymore, so we got to do some serious entitlement reform.
So that's really what
Paul Ryan is just salivating over that,
right? And so that means entitlements are not something that it's like some lazy people just say, I'm entitled. No, there's the things we all pay into.
Yes.
To fund, however, you need adequate tax collections to continue funding them.
You need revenue,
and they are things like Medicare. And Social Security and Medicaid.
Those are the big ones.
And Medicaid, which is often considered as like a poor people's insurance, is actually, unfortunately, because the insurance policies of our country still aren't progressive enough, right? They cover a lot of because we don't have anything like single payer, frankly. Yeah. They cover a lot of expenses.
Long-term care,
right.
nursing home care, that kind of stuff.
Most people incur. They wind up being the insurer of last resort, but most people wind up incurring these expenses.
Yeah.
Long-term care being primary among them. I'm not sure most people. I think most people do because, I know in a family with special needs children, like my own, Medicaid helps pay for some of the higher expenses, especially like ongoing things like therapies.
Oh, sure.
And they're prohibitive for almost anybody to not have that.
Well, and by the same token, Social Security, people...
The costs are prohibitive.
People, will consider Social Security by and large a retirement program, right? And they forget that disability insurance is largely paid for out of Social Security. If you're a child and you're disabled, you're getting disability payments from Social Security.
Right. If you're a child and your breadwinners are disabled, you get SSI. If your breadwinner dies, your parents die.
Absolutely.
Things like that. So these are all things that
these are at risk. They're going to be under the gun if all of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't have the revenues that we anticipated because we cut taxes for corporations and the top 1%.
They're basic safety net programs that exist because all modern societies know they have to exist in order to have a civilized society.
Of course.
And actually even to keep income at the lower levels, which keeps the economy running. It's really important to have that. And we don't have an extremely generous safety net in the United States. We tend to have one of the leaner ones as it is. And the chances are it's going to get a lot leaner thanks to these.
No, it's all going to trickle down.
Right, fine. There you go. And meanwhile, taxes are actually going to increase on a very high number of middle-class families.
Yep, absolutely.
We're talking about the state and local income tax deduction, which by the way, one thing the states could do is plug holes in the safety net left by the federal government. Mm-hmm. But in order to do so, they have to levy taxes.
Yep.
Those taxes were tax deductible, still are, under current law. When this tax bill passes, most likely, unless they pull that out of conference, those won't be deductible, which will mean that states that decide to plug the hole will be hitting their taxpayers with a double whammy.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so it's an attack on really blue states, in my opinion.
I mean, we really don't, at this point, we don't know how it's going to shake out. So we speculated last time around.
The reason that deduction exists, though, is because if you live in a state like, say, New York that has, I just want to point this out, that does charge people that expense, then they're actually less dependent on the federal government for funding.
Well,
there's a state-based solution. It's states' rights.
Those are states that are contributing states because they get less back in federal dollars than they contribute.
Now the incentive to do that is going to go out the window, and or at least be greatly diminished.
Yeah,
and to me I thought this whole thing about Republicans was about state. Republicans always believed in the rights of the states to be sovereign in a way and have their own policies and see what fits best for them.
That's a bunch of bullshit. They believe it in as much as it conforms to the initiatives that they want to accomplish.
This is a total attack on the states' ability to set their own priorities.
Yeah.
So it's really an unfortunate.
It's an unfortunate development.
Meanwhile, it also takes away the individual mandate too.
Yep. Yeah, they threw that in there, and that managed to pass.
That's the part that ensures that enough people buy health insurance, so that you have healthier people buying it too.
Yeah.
There's a tax penalty in the Affordable Care Act if you don't buy health insurance.
Yeah.
That's going to go now, and that sounds really liberating. Except what it's going to do is create markets for health insurance of those that do buy it that are sicker and sicker.
Yeah, it's a sicker population, and so
we're talking about a 10% premium increase.
10% premium increase
across the board
millions,
as a result of this.
Millions more uninsured, I think, in the next
14 million.
Yep.
Yep. So about a little more than half of what was already proposed under Obamacare repeal.
So the progress we've achieved in the last few years with more insured is now going to be negated because
or at least 60% of it looks like it might be.
Right, a lot of the progress.
Or up to 60% could be, right.
And again, this is all being hammered out. So like last time around when we talked, we thought that there was a chance that whatever the Senate passed, the House would just take up and pass that bill.
Now, Collins thinks she's going to get the Murray-Alexander bill in exchange.
I don't know how that's going to. I don't know time-wise how that's going to work, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Again, we'll see what comes out of conference.
That was one of her justifications.
It sounds like that the assurances that she was given, Paul Ryan and company are not fans of. So this takes us to what the Senate is going to look like by the time this comes out of the conference. So this bill, they got to go to conference committees
because you passed two different bills, slightly different, but different.
Right. So the process in Congress is that the House passed one version, the Senate passed another version. So the House could pass the Senate version, then it goes directly to Trump, but because they don't want to do that, they had a vote this week to agree to go to conference. So then representatives from the House and Senate get together in a room. They hammer out a compromise bill containing elements of each of them,
and this is common in bicameral legislation.
Yeah, this is not anything that's unusual. This is normal legislation, despite how we got here.
Right.
This is the normal process. So,
and apparently they are going to honor that.
Yeah,
so that's good.
That's where it's going,
and that means that the House and the Senate will each get another vote on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll each get to vote on the bill.
Right.
Yeah, whatever they come up with.
This is actually a good example of civics, how a bill becomes law. At least the end process.
Yes.
The hearing process, the process of where they had scribbles and amendments written right like an hour before the bill. They had a 467-page bill unveiled an hour before they were asked to vote on it.
Yeah.
That's not normal process.
No.
However,
well, their math was way off.
Normal process.
You see their math was way off, and it's even more expensive than they anticipated.
Here's a question: How did the parliamentarian wind up being able to rule on scratch outs and stuff being workable under reconciliation, which is you only need 50 votes? There's strict rules on that.
They said it was going to cost X, and it actually is going to end up costing Y. So, but bottom line is it already passed.
But who knows? I mean, they changed the language right before the bill. I mean, I'm surprised that the parliamentarian didn't throw another flag.
It's a bastardization of the process as it's supposed to.
To the credit of the parliamentarian, they did throw a few flags in the plays.
Yes.
In the days leading up to it.
They did.
And at least made them stay up late a few nights.
There's obviously a lot of other activity going on in the Congress outside of taxes that is going to have an impact ultimately on what happens with this tax bill. So this week we've had some activity.
We have political things going on.
Yes, right. And so John Conyers,
like electoral. Yeah,
John Conyers has retired.
Who replaces him in the interim?
Well, right now there's a vacancy. They're going to have a special election.
The governor of Michigan, who's a Republican, doesn't appoint.
No, not in the case of the House. Okay. It's just a vacancy. They have an election,
okay,
and then that vacancy gets filled. In the meantime, it's just a vacancy.
So it will be down one Democratic vote in the House.
Yep.
Now as a result.
Yep. And then in the Senate, it came out today. So we touched on a previous podcast about the challenges that Al Franken has had.
Which have gotten a lot worse.
Yes. So there was, I believe today, the 7th and 8th woman came out today and accused him of inappropriate groping, touching around photos, inappropriate kissing, that kind of stuff. And it's
right.
I saw that come out today, and I'm like, he's done.
Now, there was a fair amount of skepticism of this relative to, say, some of these other high-profile incidents beforehand, because we were discussing off pod, mostly this is about believe the stories, don't disbelieve, but why would they have reason, as John Oliver said, to lie?
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to partisan politics, an advantage, I can think of a lot of reasons why somebody might be put up to lie, just because I think there can be so many things way out of there. So the first person who accuses Franken it feels like 3 years ago.
It was like three weeks ago.
Is a right-wing talk show host on Fox News. So
the one on the USO tour.
So I apologize, for being skeptical, but that's my first reaction, just given the polarized politics, was to be that a lot of people who don't fit that same profile have now come out and said he's done at least, again, it isn't as boorish, I suppose, as even violent as, say, like a Weinstein,
right.
Louis C.K., but it is, it's unprofessional.
It's unprofessional.
At the very least.
It's inappropriate.
Inappropriate.
One of the women that came out today, she was a former Democratic staffer, and this was right after Obama was elected. She was at an event, and Al Franken was there, and she was excited because her mother was a very big fan of his, so she decided to get a picture with him, and apparently he put his hand around her waist and gave it a couple of squeezes, and there you go. And
underneath the waist.
Yeah, it's just gross. I mean,
yeah. And then
this is obviously a pattern now.
Right.
And if we've got 8 accusers, and that's obviously not 100% of the occurrences, just given
right.
And he
never came out and said, "Look, I screwed up."
Yeah, he waffled. He kind of pleaded ignorance. It's just not. It's not going to work. No. And so after what came out today, so 30 senators, starting with all the female senators in the Senate, Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, all the way down to Tammy Baldwin in our own state of Wisconsin.
Now I was. I look up to Tammy Baldwin,
of course, but
yes,
a number of them came out this morning, and then
I really admire Tammy Baldwin.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, several of their male colleagues came out. So by afternoon, it was pretty apparent that he was done. Yeah.
All
so
right.
it's not official, but tomorrow. So we're recording this Wednesday.
That means
Thursday.
we have 48. People who caucus as Democratic senators, even though Sanders and who's that guy from Maine?
Angus King.
Democrats. But we have 48 Dems. That means we're down to 47.
Yep, and then
and you got Bob Corker voting with us on the tax bill.
Right. So the timing of this will be interesting because so Franken resigns.
So you essentially really only have 48 strong no votes on the tax bill.
Correct.
So then, where does that lead us? What happens to the Senate seat?
So
said the Conyers, it's not a gubernatorial appointment.
No, so that one is a vacancy until they can schedule the election.
Okay.
In the case of Al Franken, Mark Dayton, who's the Democratic governor from Minnesota, he gets to appoint the replacement that will then fill the seat until 2018, at which time there will be an election to fill the remaining 2 years, I believe it is.
So that seat will not
term.
be vacant for more than a minute, basically.
I would expect that the resignation would officially take place to line up with the time frame of the replacement. That's the smart way to play it.
He's going to announce it tomorrow.
Yeah, that he's resigning, but whether it takes effect right away. I mean,
all indications are
we'll have to see, but. Yeah, I would expect a pretty quick turnaround.
So meanwhile, on the other side, we've got some scandalous things with the Republican Roy Moore.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's going to
happen. The judge is well known for a lot of far-right opinions in Alabama.
And that election is just under a week away.
But now also known for his interest in dating teenagers, very young teenagers, when he was in his 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the Republicans decided, well, we don't really care about that stuff anymore, and they decided to fully get on board. So, that's the only thing.
No longer the party of family values.
That's part of why I say things where I could actually see where there'd be a motivation to lie when it comes to partisan politics, because one, there's a party that doesn't care.
Right.
They just want to.
Well, they care, but their priorities are power above everything else.
Do they care? I don't think they care. I think that Donald Trump, said the most ridiculous, offensive things, and had all these accusers, and then they elect him president.
Yeah.
If you look at his poll numbers from before that Access Hollywood tape came out to Election Day, he was already way underwater long before then. Before anybody was accusing him of any of that stuff.
Yeah.
There were rumors about his ex-wife being raped, but he was down by about 8 points, and even the polls that guessed it wrong had him maybe down 3 or 4 on election day. So he gained popularity you could almost say as a result of these accusations,
Perhaps.
people circled the wagons. They said, oh boy, we better protect our guy.
Yeah.
And then I just looked at it, the generic ballot. It like almost perfectly coincides with this more
In Alabama.
No, national generic ballot has gotten a lot closer between Republicans and Democrats since about the middle of November, which is exactly when this Roy Moore stuff started coming out.
Well, but it also coincides with what was going on with Conyers, what was going on with Franken, and
No, that stuff came out a little later, I think. I mean, the way I think Republicans look at it is they see accusations against one of their own, no matter how credible they are, they see it as a politically motivated attack. They circle the wagons.
even if they don't see it as that, they treat it as such.
If
they don't,
I can only imagine they see it that way because
Yeah.
men and women alike in their party get behind and say, "Hey, we got to get our right wingers in here."
Well, that's obviously the approach in
Democrats
Alabama
have
right now.
like a conscience and worry, like actually get concerned about it and try to correct the problem.
Well, for one,
and so it's like there's two sets of rules going on here, and that's the part that bothers
there's
me.
two sets of rules. Democrats are holding their representatives to a higher standard, but it's not coincidental that which party has more female representatives in the House and the Senate. I mean, the more women that serve, that's going to have an impact
We're
on
getting
it.
our comeuppance for rallying behind Bill Clinton 20 years ago. I don't know. I mean, maybe that seems like a stretch.
What is happening in the case of Connors, in the case of Franken, I think it's the right thing for both of them to go away.
I'm not saying it isn't.
I think in the context of what's happening with Roy Moore, look at the contrast. You've got Franken, who inappropriate groping. There's that, and then there's what's going on with Roy Moore. The guy was banned from the mall because he was preying on teenagers.
Right. Well, like basically, he is accused of molestation.
So the Democrats are like
child molestation.
The Democrats are like, see ya, Franken, and the Republicans are like, oh, let's just leave it up to the people of Alabama. Come on in, Roy Moore. If the Alabama says yes,
just
then
saying it's a liberal attack.
Hey,
just like
fine.
with the president last year. I mean, they like rally behind it now.
Yeah.
And so I think. As much as this upsets me, I do think you're right that Franken and Conyers don't belong in Congress right now.
Yeah.
I certainly don't believe Roy Moore belongs in Congress.
No.
And obviously, I really didn't think he belonged there in the first place, but I really now feel more strongly about it. However, what's going to happen? Is he going to win?
I don't know. I mean, the polls have gone back and forth, and
if he lost, the Democrats would probably get another vote against the tax thing.
Exactly. So
that would be at a 50-50 split.
So it would be if Doug Jones wins, then the Senate goes 51-49. But yes, it would
because
be
if Corker holds.
If Corker holds, it's a 50-50 split.
And then you might have some talking to do with Collins.
Yep.
I don't know about.
They would have to
Flake. What's that guy? That last hurrah, as Nate Silver, whoever calls it, the last hurrah caucus on 538.
Yeah.
It's all those Republicans who can't stand Trump that are retiring.
Yeah.
And are actually a little bit more moderate, mostly. Although what's funny is that Flake used to be seen as a Tea Partier, but
he's conservative, but he's just not. He's not
right. He gave to Doug Jones $100. He called the country over party.
He did. Well, he was with Trump at the White House. The media was there, and Trump came out on camera, like backing up Roy Moore, flanking to his left is Jeff Flake in frame in the picture, probably just being like, seriously, you're putting your full endorsement out there with me on camera with you. Yeah.
So now you're gonna you really could have a pissed off Jeff Flake vote. No.
Yep.
And
you can't afford to lose any of them. You can't afford to lose Murkowski, Flake.
Flake was a friend of John McCain's, although now they seem to be buddies now. And you may see
from the same state. If Jones wins, then the House loses a lot of clout in terms of what they want to get out of the conference committee. It basically puts a lot of power. It puts a lot of power in Mitch McConnell's hands.
That's why we have a resident Senate expert on this podcast.
Well,
Scott Stearns worked with Senator Feingold way back in the day.
Yes, and if Doug Jones wins on Tuesday, then McConnell has a heart-to-heart with Ryan and says, like, look, I can't afford to lose one vote, so we've got to come together on this, and you have to give me whatever I need to keep these people in line. Otherwise, this whole operation is for naught.
So Jones, the polling, like I saw, was drifting back toward more. I wonder if
I think it was like 3 points.
If right, so it looks like Moore probably will win. Roughly between 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 points. I saw a 6-point lead.
But it will be interesting. I mean, in the context of what occurred this week with Connor's resignation and assuming Franken resigns, nothing's official, but assuming Franken resigns tomorrow. So it gives the Democrats the high ground in terms of like, hey, look, we're holding our people to this standard.
Republican voters care?
I don't know that. I don't know that by and large the GOP voters do, but I think people that may be on the fence, if we're talking about a race that's within a margin of error, it could make that difference.
And then there's turnout too. There's talk that if non-white voters vote like they did in Virginia, which was almost like Obama levels in 2008 and 2012. Yeah. And they just did in Virginia a couple weeks ago. If they come out and force and vote at a higher rate or rate similar to 2008, it could be much closer. Maybe Jones has a slight chance.
Yeah.
And that would be cool. So, because it would get you to, in theory, a 50-50 split on the taxes.
Yeah.
Perhaps shooting it down, but maybe I'm wishing too much because you're right. McConnell will go to the conference with Ryan. That said, that'll be really interesting. It does bring us to, we don't have that much time left, but I'll look ahead to the 2018 elections. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Franken is gonna, his seat comes up for another vote, and it will run concurrent with
Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken's replacement will be on the same ballot.
Which is the same year that Baldwin here and Scott Walker are up.
Yeah, the mid-year election that, assuming it's a year that favors the Democrats.
Which probably will be still. The generic ballot's gotten a little closer, but it still favors the Democrats pretty clearly.
Yeah.
The one I'm interested in is the Blankenship. The guy, Don, I think Blankenship, entered against Joe Manchin, who should be the most vulnerable Democrat from West Virginia. Because it's so pro-Trump there. Yeah. But Blankenship is a hated man in West Virginia because he was the guy who ran the mine where all those miners were killed in an accident about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 8 years ago. He actually, I think, had to do jail time for breaking all the mine laws, safety, and pushing them to keep mining even though they knew there were risks. Mm-hmm. So it'd be very interesting to see if West Virginia's gone that far to the right, they would vote, just because they become such a right-wing state, that they would vote for a guy who's reviled. He's despised in West Virginia.
Well, it becomes another dynamic,
I think the Republicans will probably run somebody else and say, "Look, we
if they want to make it more of a sure thing." What's interesting though is, Manchin's popular, and he's actually been very supportive of the Democratic stance on a number of these high-profile issues.
He's voted with Trump on things like nominations, but he's voted against him on all the big
nominations and some of the other things. But when it came to health care, when it came to the tax cut, he was there.
More power to him.
So I haven't heard a lot.
Unlike that governor who just decided to switch parties, he was just elected last year, and he decides to look at the tea leaves and switch parties and join Trump, and while he's introducing Trump, it's ridiculous.
Well, trivia for you. So, who was the last Democrat to serve in the U.S. Senate in Alabama?
It's kind of a trick question. Heflin? No. Rich. Shelby.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I remember, good for you. I remember because
Richard Shelby, because you just reminded me of the party switching thing. So Richard Shelby was a Democrat in the U.S. Senate from Alabama,
in Clinton's first term.
Yeah, and then 1994 was the Gingrich Revolution, and the Republicans took Congress and the Senate, and he just decided, I like being in the majority, I'm going to switch.
Well, he was voting hard against the entire Democratic agenda.
It was these Southern Democrats.
The Clinton. He was really a throwback to the racist Democrats, basically the old solid South of Dixie. The Southern, he was a true Wallace Democrat kind of.
It was just back then you had the kind of legacy of people that were Democrat, but in name only.
And a Wallace Democrat, we call is kind of a racist renegade Democrat. What's interesting is that Wallace, in his very old age, as I recall, openly embraced civil rights and totally changed. near the end.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, he became
It's
governor
kind
of
of 180.
Alabama, and he was like pro-civil rights and like really progressive in the early 80s, I believe. I think we kind of covered, we mentioned local and state politics, Walker and Baldwin, all quiet in Wisconsin right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the holiday season. I think there'll be a lot of more activity after the new
Calder
year.
Royce looks like she's getting into the Democratic primary. I think she can make more noise than people, it rhymes with Royce, than people might be aware of. She can build an organization. On the other hand, she lost the primary to Spokane a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't impressive. And she tried to accuse Spokane of being in league with the Koch brothers. So.
That doesn't.
Or like somebody supporting her did that. So that would be interesting. The question is, does this hurt us that it's so quiet here? I would argue probably. Because
the fact that there's not more activity right now?
Yeah, just that there's less controversy. No, I think
there's a lot of national news right now, and it kind of drowns out the governor's race because it's not in high gear right now, and it's not like there's debates taking place and a lot of advertising.
I actually think that the lack of headlines is Walker's friend.
Yeah, but I mean we're a little less than a year out, though. I mean,
yeah, and I mean as soon as he hangs out with Trump over something, I mean, what was funny is that Walker decided to grab headlines with that Foxconn thing. And it actually took him from almost recovered in his poll numbers to actually going back down.
Going underwater.
It didn't seem to help.
No.
That's for sure.
No, it did not.
No. I mean, he's a very polarizing figure, Walker is.
He is.
But I do think the more news generally we see on Walker, the worse it is for him at this point.
So you're saying the more people see his mug on the 10 o'clock news, the worse off he is?
Especially seeing him with Trump. In a state that's very close and it probably has a fair number of people who voted for Trump that wish they hadn't, or people that, as we pointed out before, people who just didn't vote who had previously voted for Obama. Because let's remember, Wisconsin didn't go that far right.
No.
And Trump actually got fewer votes than the last Republican ticket of Romney and Ryan. It's just the Democrats lost 200 and some thousand votes. Yeah. Trump lost a couple thousand. So
the differential was 20,000. So.
Yeah, so that's what gives me a lot of hope, right? Is that Wisconsin didn't suddenly have a lot of people switch to red. It's just the blue people didn't vote.
Right.
So that might be voter ID, but that's something for next week maybe.
Yeah.
This is probably our penultimate podcast of the year.
Yeah, I think.
I think second last if you don't want to look it up on your dictionary.
I think. I think we'll come back next week. We'll have the results of the Alabama election. Hopefully, hopefully it's not something that's going to require an extensive recount or something that close. But we'll see.
It'll be better we'll see. Big win with the right.
This is true. So we'll do a postmortem on that and kind of do. I think we'll take a look back at.
We'll see how hard we need to drink that night and go from there.
All right.
All right. Well, with that, forward.